It is a joy that we can be together. I'm very excited about our class tonight. We are in a class on the Sermon on the Mount, and we are moving from Matthew 5 into Matthew chapter 6. So if you have a Bible with you or you want to grab one out of the pew, tonight we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. And for this section of the sermon, I'm entitling our discussion, Sincerity, and Who Do You Want to Please? And so our study will be predominantly these first four verses of Matthew chapter 6 tonight. If you don't have a workbook, we still have a couple of extras back there. I encourage you to take one. We are looking at page 29 tonight, page 29, which is lesson 14. And so the questions are there. Maybe you've already studied and worked through those, and so you're well prepared for our discussion. Even though it's a big room, I do encourage participation, questions and comments. We love it. Everybody else appreciates it. But we have to do it a little different in this room because it is big. If you would raise your hand, we've got a couple of brothers with microphones running around, and we'll get a microphone to you so you can speak and I can hear you and everybody can hear you. And maybe some things get shouted out faster than the mic runner can get there. I will do my best to repeat those things as I hear them. But unfortunately, I don't always hear everything. So sometimes we just have to repeat ourselves. But I'm really glad that we are together tonight. At the conclusion of the Bible class, there will be a couple of bells. After that second bell, this class will be dismissed for a little break. And anyone who can is invited to move on down front because all the other classes and children and everything will come in here. We'll have a couple of songs, a little devotional time together. And we hope you'll stick around and participate in that. All right. We're going to have Brother Vance lead us in a word of prayer in just a moment. There are a great number of prayer requests, things going on in the life of the congregation, but I would just remind everyone that one of the preachers we just began supporting, Charles Mwakalonge, Cashew Charles Mwakalonge, had a terrible thing to happen this week. He found out that about 80% of his cashew plants, his cashew fields, were set on fire and burned. And he contacted the police, and the police came out, and the police told him, "Sir, we believe this does look arson. It looks like it's on purpose, and we'll try to investigate it." Charles is mystified as to who or why who would have done it or why it would have been done, but nevertheless, here we are. And so that is a huge setback for him. And so we just want to pray for him and his family and decisions moving forward. So that's my prayer request that I'll put out to you and remind everyone about at this time. But we're glad that we're here together. We're going to have a great study and discussion from Matthew 6. But let's begin with the word of prayer. So if you would, bow your heads, and then Brother Vance, if you'd lead us.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're so very thankful for this day that you've blessed us with and for this time that you've given us here this evening to gather here and open your word and study from it. And God, as we hear the words of Jesus, we're so blessed to have those and to be able to take that into our lives, the very words from his lips, so that we can make application and we can do better to please you. Dear God, we ask you to be with Charles and be with the loss of his fields. And we know that those in that part of the world already struggle and have difficult times with what they're given. We ask you to please bless Charles, bless his family, and bless everyone there, that they might be able to get through this struggle and be able to grow spiritually there. Go with us this evening, be with Andrew as he presents what he's prepared, and be with all the teachers here tonight. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Much. So let's look at Matthew 6 together, shall we? Matthew chapter 6 and verse number 1. Take heed that you do not do your charitable deeds before men to be seen by them. Otherwise, you have no reward from your Father in heaven. Therefore, when you do a charitable deed, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory from men. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward. But when you do a charitable deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that your charitable deed may be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will himself reward you openly. I think we are transitioning into another portion of the sermon. as we have concluded a series of "You have heard it say, but I say," or "It has been said, but I say," and moving into some other admonitions. However, I don't think that it's completely divorced from what we have been reading and studying before. If you'll notice, particularly verses 43 through 48 of the previous chapter, there was discussion about loving a neighbor and then loving who else? Your enemy. Love your neighbor, love your enemy. Do you think we need to do that genuinely, or should that be a show? It's probably supposed to be genuine, isn't it? Probably supposed to be real. Think about taking some of those steps to love even an enemy. If you look at verse 46 of the chapter, "For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect." The idea of loving and rewarding and blessing and greeting people who cannot do anything for you. No reciprocity there. Why would you do that? Why would you go out of your way to serve somebody else? Maybe somebody that's not on your social level, or perhaps even someone you've got a past with and you consider them an enemy. Why would you do that? What if people saw you doing that? What might they say about you? Well, they might say you're a swell guy. You're a really nice lady. And look how generous you are. And they might notice that. When we move into our reading for tonight, he doesn't say not to be doing thoughtful things, good things, charitable things. No, we ought to be doing them. But what is the heart? What is the motivation? What is the why that will please our God? The why. What's the warning in Matthew 6, verse 1? What is Jesus warning about? What do you think? Motives? Being seen? Was there actually him? Harley? Being a showman in front of the whole community. Very good. That's exactly what he's warning about. Doing these things to be seen by men. Doing good. And when we do good, we still must do good with a pure heart. Remember the beatitude in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Pure in what way? It's not divided. It's not polluted. By what? Well, here, by pride, by a desire to have the praise of men, to be seen by men. There's lots of things that might pollute our heart. And, this, what we're getting into here, and then the next lesson, is a real challenging thing because we're talking about doing good, righteous things, charitable deeds, prayer. Nobody's going to say, don't do that, Christian. And yet, what is our heart when we're doing it? Why are we doing it? And there may be a great temptation to pride and mixed motives, but we must be pure in heart. Why do you think people would practice religion to be seen by others? Number 2. He says, don't do your charitable deeds before men to be seen by them. So why would people do that? Gary?
Well, I could think of in that day for certain that it was, you could be ostracized pretty quickly if you didn't obey some of the leaders. So it could also be a step up the ladder positionally for showing your good works among some of those that are in power at the time and stuff too.
No, that's great. If this is what's necessary to climb the next rung, and religio-social status to move up in the ranks of the Pharisees or whatever. I'm doing this. I'm paying my dues to get promotions, but people need to see me to get those promotions. That's pretty good. Back here? Yes? Nathan?
Like you were saying earlier about pride is because it's for them. It's not for it's not really for the other people. It's not for anybody else but for themselves.
Okay. Because I want people to look at me. I want people to look at me doing good things, so they think good things and say good things about me. Anything else? Why would people practice religion to be seen by others? What's that? Okay, status, admiration. Very good. You're going to become a leader in this community of fine religious people because you're doing fine religious things. Very good observation. Any other reasons you might want to do your religion to be seen by people? Matt and then Bob?
Because it feels good to judge other people.
Feels good to judge other people. We want to elaborate just a little bit? No, you can't because he stole the microphone. He was really on to something there. He was really on to something there.
I think, when we see ourselves for what we are, it's hard to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot better feeling to put on the trappings and then point fingers at everybody else and say, if you were only as good as me.
If you were only as good as me.
But it's a thin veil of insecurity
Okay.
about our righteousness.
Okay. All right. I'm doing this. I want people to see this so that I begin to check off in my mind, look, I know I'm doing this and they're not. Bob?
Well, Jesus says they're exchanging whatever it is they're looking for their heavenly reward.
Okay.
So there must be some kind of earthly reward or some kind of praise or some kind of self-fulfillment in having people feel like that you have done well openly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There you go. There you go. And so some type of public acknowledgement or aggrandizement, the applause of people. Let's see, Derek here.
I think it also can be just validation, instant validation. When we're practicing these things, thinking that we're only going to be validated by God eventually, that takes patience and trust and all that. But whether it's at work or in sports or in practicing religion, we are often validated by the way people talk about us and reward us.
Yeah. That's a good point, that where there's a place for, I would say, healthy encouragement, because we are supposed to encourage one another and stir up one another to love and good works. There must be a little bit of awareness about that in order to do it. But perhaps that could cross a line to where you're not just encouraging me, I'm actually needing something from you in order to continue. I need to take something from you in order to do right things. That's really thoughtful, Derek. I appreciate that, brother. Okay. Good thoughts. Good thoughts. In Matthew chapter 6 and verse 2, what is a natural act of righteousness for religious people? And then what might be an example of that? We can get lots of answers on this. But what's a natural thing that righteous people do or religious people do? Well, not necessarily that they naturally announce it. Some of them are doing that, though. He's trying to correct that. But you're getting at it when he says, when you do a charitable deed. It's not, what's that? Yeah, that's it. It's a charitable deed. Not if you do it or you ought to do it, when you do it. And so it's like this expectation. You're one of God's people. You're going to do charitable deeds. You're going to be involved in some type of charitable work. This Greek word here that's translated in the New King James, charitable deed, in other translations, it's actually translated alms or alms giving. But that's what it means. It means an act of kindness or an act of mercy. This word, again, in the New King James, it's rendered charitable deed, and maybe some of your translations have it a little different. but it's in the same word family as mercy. In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 7, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And the difference is this, that with this merciful in verse 7 of Matthew 5, with that beatitude, that's much about a heart condition or disposition. The emphasis in Matthew 6 and verse 2, when you do it would actually be mercy deed. When you do a mercy deed. And the emphasis on this is an expression then, an action, a deed, not just a feeling of pity or tenderness towards another person's plight, but the outward expression of mercy. That's what we got here. When you do it, here's how you do it. And since blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy, it really does follow that we're going to be people expressing that mercy in alms, charitable deeds, mercy deeds, good deeds. So, what would be an example of that? You know what? I actually did write that down in my notes. He said, what about the Good Samaritan? An incredible example in Luke chapter 10 and verse 33. This teaching that Jesus did to answer a question, and who is my neighbor? That's a question. That's why he tells the story. And, it wasn't a priest. He wasn't a neighbor to the fella who got waylaid by thieves and left for dead. And it wasn't a priest who was a neighbor to the fella who got, robbed and left for dead. But in Luke 10 and, did I write down that right? Is it Luke 10? 30, thank you. I wanted to start in verse 33 to talk about the Samaritan. My problem was I was looking at chapter 11 and I wasn't seeing it. Okay, but a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was. This is, of course, the victim of the thieves. And when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. And he set him on his own animal, and he brought him to an inn, and he took care of him. And on the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, take care of him. And whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you. So which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among thieves? And he said to him, he who showed, here's our word, mercy on him. And Jesus said, go and do likewise. How did he show the mercy? He picked him up. He bandaged the wounds. He took him to a safe place. He paid for even more of his care. These were all deeds, right? These are all actions. And he showed himself to be a neighbor. So that really gets the ball rolling. What is an example of charitable deeds? What's something you'd say, yeah, I'm a Christian. I don't do this to be seen by people, but this is something I think, this is something I do or we ought to do. Or you probably don't want to say you do it because I don't want us to give you any applause tonight, not in this lesson. So speak hypothetically. Say, I have a friend who, and we'll all know, you have a Christian friend who does something like this. So who's your Christian friend? Tell me about your Christian friend. What does he or she do that's a good deed? Just share a couple of things because it'll be edifying and give good ideas to the rest of us. All right? Tim has a friend. And somebody else think about what your friend's doing. Maybe somebody from over here. It's quiet over here tonight. Tim? And then...
Well, connecting with mercy, I was thinking like David in the cave when he could have taken someone's life instead of snipping off a piece of clothing.
Okay.
But here in this congregation, I'm in a position, as are the elders. People come to us, and some come to us regularly saying, I've been blessed financially this time of year.
Okay.
Who needs help?
Okay.
And frequently, there's a couple of people, and they'll just give me some money, and they'll say, put it in a blank envelope and put it in a mailbox.
Okay.
So that happens here. So there's people, good people here that do that on a regular basis.
All right. Just trying to learn about some particular needs. And quietly, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. I'm getting ahead of myself. But anonymously trying to help in that way. That's really good. That's a really good example. Really good story. Anybody else have a friend that does something? Yes, ma'am? I don't know. Are they going to get there? What were you going to say? Okay. She knows people who keep a box of supplies for homeless folks. And when they're driving around and they see somebody that's, in need and asking for things, well, here's some supplies to give right to them. That's a good idea. I knew some people that kept little grocery cards with them, prepaid Publix cards or whatever. And same kind of deal. Sometimes you run into people that are just asking for things and they need some help, and give them a card they could go get some groceries with. One more. Anybody else got a friend?
Andrew?
Oh, okay. Hey, Matt.
I have a friend who is a good mechanic. It's just his hobby. It's not what he does for a living.
Yeah?
But he has 3 days off a week, and it's 9 times out of 10, he's going to have 2 of those off days scheduled helping people, doing their brakes, doing their, alignment, whatever
Yeah.
they need done on their car.
That's so
because he
great.
knows it's something that he can do to save them money just by giving them his time.
What a gift of time and skill. Incredible what a gift of skill will do for somebody else. Okay. Well, it's something to be thinking. The Lord, the way he talks about it in Matthew 6, it is assumed when you do charitable deeds. Okay. Maybe contributions to a food bank. Maybe buying gasoline for someone, or diapers for someone, or helping the infirm, taking meals to somebody, cleaning a home for a shut-in, doing yard work for an elderly person. Just all kinds of things that we can do and ought to do, not because we're seeking to be seen by people, but I just want to do this service to my neighbor because I love the Lord, and the Lord wants me to love my neighbor. All right, so he goes on and he says, when you do it, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory from men. What is a hypocrite? It's the first time this shows up in the Gospel of Matthew. And maybe the first time you ever read it or heard it, you know what? You might not have even thought it was such an ugly word. But what is this word? What does it mean? Where does it come from? Amy?
It's an old Greek word
Yes.
having to do with theater,
Yeah.
meaning an actor. So at first it didn't mean theater.
No.
So it just over time it became to mean like an actor, someone who pretends to feeling beliefs, virtues they do not actually possess.
That's exactly right. She said it's a word, it was part of the Greek vocabulary of that day. It's the Greek word for actor, for a stage player. And so it takes its root in Athens, in Greek culture, and the development of theater. And so it didn't mean deceiver per se, but it was one who played a part. And the more Jesus begins to use the word, it really does kind of take on that idea of a deceiver, doesn't it? And particularly about religious things. Thespis was the first of the hypocrites around 534 BC. We get our word thespian, and there's another word for actor, right? But around 600 BC, the Greeks started doing stage plays. And the way they did the plays was everyone would stand together in a chorus line, and they would move together. They would chant and sing the poems together, and it was quite thrilling. They would dress up to do it, by the way. Here's a picture of different Greek masks. And when you put on your mask, why, you were that character in the play, that character in the story. And so they went that way for about 70 years. Everybody stand in a line and sway and sing your song. They would do this as part of religious rites at the festival of Dionysius, all right, who is the god of wine and revelry, and that's the background of your theater. And then about 70 years in, at 534 BC, one of those hypocrites stepped out in front and upstaged the chorus and said his own lines. And his name was Thespis. And that's where we get our word thespian. Revolutionary. What if we just had one actor say a few lines, and all the audience kind of looked at him, and then all the chorus is still kind of back there swaying and singing, responded to what this fellow said. And now we've really got something cooking. And it wasn't too long after one guy stepped forward that guess what happened? Why, somebody else stepped forward. And then there was a third. Next thing you know, you're doing stage plays with all these different characters, about 100 years later, and telling the dramas, and then comedies came about 100 years after that. But to mark out that you were one of the characters in the play, one of the hypocrites, you had special robes, and you got to put on a mask. And there you were, that character. And then you did the best you could to say your lines. It's really something, and I never necessarily thought about it in quite that connection before. But, when Jesus is lambasting the Pharisees in Matthew 23 again, he particularly talks about the way they make their fancy robes. The phylacteries have to be broad. We got to have the extra tassels on the robes and all that. And I've always thought about, they just really wanted to look, they got their righteous garb on. But it might be a little bit more to, he's sort of filling out the picture of just what actors they are. It's a costume they're putting on, people, because they're the actors. But unlike the Greeks, who at least had the propriety to do this in an amphitheater or a stage, where do these Pharisee hypocrites perform? Where's their stage? In the synagogues and in the streets. In the synagogues and in the streets. They go to the place where people have gathered to read the Word of God, and they go to the place where people have come to study the Scripture, and that's where they're putting on their play. Hypocrites, don't be like the hypocrites, sounding the trumpet before you in the synagogues and in the streets, that you may have glory from men.
Andrew?
Yes.
I understood that in those Greek plays, sometimes they would have more characters than they had actors. And so one actor would play two parts.
Change masks.
And therefore he was two-faced.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the two-facedness that made him the hypocrite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and you can see how that would happen. Yeah, you could see how it was easily come on or develop in that way. And so the Lord takes this word about this cultural figure, the actors, but now he's applying it to these religious teachers, or at least those who are doing right religious things, but with wrong motives, for the wrong audience. Which audience are you trying to impress? I got ahead of myself a little bit here because that was kind of the question. How do we know he's talking about Pharisees as such? Because he makes the stage the synagogues, not the theater, not the normal domain of the hypocrites. The street is the place where they're putting on a show of righteousness. They have made the street their stage. So, he goes on, and here's his prescription. He's not for the hypocrites. First he says, "Assuredly I say to you, they have their reward." Now, I may not have a question particularly about this. I guess I don't. What's the reward? What's the reward of an actor? Applause. That's exactly right. And that feels really good. And if you really do a good show, they'll even stand up and applaud. And if you do a really good show and somebody knows you, they'll bring you flowers and throw flowers at you. Don't ask me how I know, but it happens. Yeah. I have a friend. He said, so hey, you know what? You want people to clap for you. You're going to get that. That's your reward. Verse 3. But when you do a charitable deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. What a memorable and perhaps curious expression. So how do you put that into practice? I can't. Oh, he says, well, keep one hand behind your back all the time. Oh, that way it wouldn't know, that's for sure. Was it okay, Brother Tom?
I almost forgot what I was going to say. You just don't make it obvious what you're doing.
Okay.
You try to keep it hidden, that you're not looking for notoriety for it or any pat on the back.
Okay.
You just know somebody needs it. You want to do it. You know God knows what's going on. Nobody else needs to.
There you go. God knows. Nobody else needs to know. That's good. Say a couple of thoughts down here, Eric. It looks like Sam and then Sister Amy.
This may just be a takeaway that I'm taking from the left hand and the right hand, but we see left and right a lot of times as bad and good respectively.
Okay.
And like for me, whenever I'm doing a good thing, a lot of times it's me trying to fight my own bad side that's wanting me to take credit for something and letting my, the goodness of God through me, act on something and trying to not let that left side have any part of it. But that's
Okay.
that's probably not digging a little too deep there. But.
Well, I mean, it's a great application, though, to think about and, kind of personify that struggle of doing something just for God and maybe a little bit of pride or mixed motive. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this left? Yeah. See, Amy?
And just having some life verses like Galatians 2:20, that if we're really dying to ourselves, we're not going to be keeping records of everything we're doing. If it's for God's glory, it's not about me. And just trying to remember that, trying to, that's a daily death, right? Trying to,
No, that's right.
having to remember that.
I think that you said about, not keeping records. That was something I wrote down there as well. How do I practice this? Well, I don't keep score. If I'm trying to keep a tally sheet in my mind of this person's done this for me, this person's done this for me, or I've done this for them, and I've done that for the other, and I've done that for the other, and they've never done anything for me. Just even that keeping score, I think, is going to be discouraging us. Don't let the right hand know what the left is doing. Yes, sir, Brother Steve.
A lot of the world sees Christianity as a bunch of hypocrites. Have they ever called you? Don't answer this. Have they ever called you a hypocrite? And how would you respond to that accusation in a relationship to someone calling you that? I saw your eyebrows go up when I said that, because that's a tough one.
Yes,
As a Christian, it doesn't matter what your faith is. You could always be better, right?
Yeah.
But if somebody calls you that, and I keep thinking of how do you put it in practice? You're doing the best you can, but you still feel like, I'm just not there yet. Does that make sense? And so how do you respond to that?
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
Well, I'll be glad to listen to some other people talk about that. But while you're thinking about how you would respond, that's something that I think is a very serious thing to say, I think, for a sincere Christian, and one to certainly genuinely consider. What have I been saying and doing that of all the things this person would accuse me of, that's the word they chose? And is there any truth in it? It's very sobering. I think if somebody uses that word, it does call, for nothing else, for self-reflection. Tom?
Hypocrisy is a deceptive act that is diametrically opposed to God's will or to what the emphasis that you've put forth or the image that you've put forth. And like I said, it is a deceptive act. And I think if a person who is a righteous person is accused of being a hypocrite, he should say, well, that's not my intent of heart.
Right.
And that's completely different than a God-fearing person who is weak or has temporary weaknesses and falls victim to a weakness.
Yeah.
They let a improper word slip or anything. They do anything that someone else could look at and say, well, that's not very Christ-like. And that's not at all what that person's life is like. They just had a
Well,
a weak
I think,
moment.
yes, you're absolutely right. That there is, moral perfection. Of course, we all want to be like Christ, and I fall short. But there is a huge gulf between, okay, I haven't achieved moral perfection, and I'm intentionally putting on a show. I mean, even the way Jesus is talking about hypocrisy here is the play actors. And so if somebody actually knows what the word means, Steve, then that's something that I got to take to heart. But if it's just an ugly thing to say because as a Christian, I've not been perfect, that's a different conversation. What are you going to say, Gary?
I just hear it similar to what Steve's saying, only that there's hypocrites in the church. And so therefore, that's why I'm not going to go there. And so you hear a lot of that. And of course, that's usually just a stiff arm in most places. But in that case, I tell them that, hey, there's no perfect church.
Yeah.
And if you find one, you join it, it's going to be imperfect.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's
right.
And
That's right.
I remember one of the elders at one of the churches we went to, every time he got up to speak or if he did announcements welcoming people, he would just point blank just say, we're just nothing but a washed up sinners. We've been washed with the blood of Christ. So he just downplayed if there was any pomp or anything else or anything else, just saying, hey, that humility is what's going to show through. So,
well, and the self-righteousness that the Pharisees will again and again be rebuked for is a put off to anybody, obviously. But what are the things that they're doing to build that story of self-righteousness? If I could use the word narrative of self-righteousness. They're doing these deeds to be seen by people. They make sure that everybody's around and there's an audience. Let's see. Yes? Who? Nathan?
I love the that Jesus many times uses the speaking of your left hand and your right hand, like when he says about if your left hand, if one hand calls you to sin, you cut it off, meaning in a way that there's a good way to do things with your hands and a bad way to do things with your hands,
Sure.
And you could put money up in the air. Hey, I'm giving money to this one guy over here, or just like the Tim was saying earlier, you slip something inside somebody's mailbox to somebody who really needs something to help them out. It's the good versus evil ways, the left and the right.
Good ways to do it. And so the left doesn't know the right, or left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So we do these good deeds, charitable deeds, quietly, privately. We want to practice unseen service. There is plenty of helpful acts of service that are done, and they go unnoticed. Do that. Be the people doing that. You do not get the applause of men. Why? They don't see. They don't notice. But as we'll discover here in a moment, somebody else is watching. Yes, ma'am?
I feel like with this question, a really big part of it is going to the root of the main goal, like how Jesus did a lot of times when there's problems that came up. I think it's really important to look at your intention of why you're doing it and what your heart is saying, and like what your heart is intending for this to have the result be, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. What is my motive? Because who is my audience? I'm not trying to please all these people, but I want to please God. I want to please God. And I'm not going to say or do anything that he's not going to see. Maybe the last thing about this I'll just say, and we'll move on, is to pray about it. It's to pray to the Lord about my heart. And I do want to help, but I want to help in the right way. What's the right way? The God-pleasing way. All right, we're going to move on here because I got another question I want to hear what y'all think about. But a couple of easy ones first. How does the Father see? In secret. That's exactly right. There are no secrets from God because he sees in the secret place, he sees everything. But how does the Father reward? Openly. Openly. When we think about the big ovation, well, that's what matters, that God is pleased. And he will reward his servants, reward openly. Okay. Seems like a little bit of a paradox. In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 16, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works. But do your charitable deeds in secret. How does those go together? How do I pursue both? All right. All right. All right. If we're walking in the footsteps of Jesus. Okay. We're just looking to do good, to please the Lord. If somebody sees it, fine. If they don't see it, that's fine, because it's really not about anybody seeing it. Appreciate that, Kathy?
Well, it was along the same lines, but it's more about motivation and purpose.
Yeah.
And we're trying to be like Jesus, and we're letting his light shine through us, not that we're just letting our light shine to say, look what a great person I am.
That's really helpful and really good. Derek, you want to add to that? I don't know, Phil, can you get to him first?
I see the part in Matthew 16 being more about being a light in darkness, which is probably not as rewarding as the Matthew 6:4 would be. And what I mean by that is, if we're being a light and trying to shine in the darkness does not care for the light.
That's what John 3 says. Darkness doesn't like light.
Yeah. So again, I don't know if I could prove that, but that's always been my mentality between the two different. The Matthew 6:4 one is, well, we're doing these things because the people that are seeing them around us are like, look how great you are. Yeah. Whereas in Matthew 5:16, it's the people that may be the majority that are seeing us may not care for it, and we've got to keep shining regardless.
And keep shining either way. Okay. And in Matthew 5, they're giving God the glory. I learned something from Rich Gant that I want to share with you on this. He talked about two kinds of lamps that give off light. One's a street lamp. Street lamp gives off light. You never look up at the street lamp, but it does its job, and there's plenty of light. And then there's a chandelier in a room. It gives off light to all the room. But with those chandeliers, they're made to be looked at. You can't help but look at them. Are we trying to be street lamps? Or are we trying to be chandeliers? We got to shine the light, but we don't want to be the focus of the attention. Kelly, were you going to say something?
That's pretty much exactly what I was thinking. The point of shining our lights, like it talks about in chapter 5, was to glorify God and to bring him the glory. And really, we're just reflecting his light, like Kathy said.
Yes.
Whereas in this point, the intent was more to bring glory to yourself.
That's
so
right.
That would be the distinction.
That's it. And that's exactly it. Matthew 5, do this to glorify God. Matthew 6, the warning, and don't be doing these things to glorify yourself. Yeah, Steve?
I'll do this real quick. You almost said what I was going to say, but I was going to say the first thing you have to have is a candle. You got to put it on a lampstand. You got to light the candle, and then you got to step back and let the candle do its job.
All right. And let's burn bright for the Lord. So on a temptation, what ways might we be tempted to be hypocritical in our giving or in our charitable deeds? Is this a temptation for anyone today, or is this just something those Pharisees struggled with? Dan?
An expectation that you will receive something in return.
Okay.
So I come over and help you rake your leaves, and I'm sitting waiting on you to offer to do something for me.
Okay.
And when we think that's just wholesome, I help you, you help me, but it's that expectation when I did it that I'm going to receive this in return.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, yes, Julene.
Before we got to that, I was thinking about someone I knew in my life as my dad, and I think he was such a good example to me. Nothing like him in that sense, but he saw the needs of the needy for what they were and how he could be the hands of the Lord. And my dad was one that, as an evangelist, was always giving, and he was just a great example of that. And I had a great thought altogether earlier, so now I'm kind of forgotten some of the things I've said, but it's more about the needs of the needy.
Yeah.
And your reflection of the Lord to them, not about yourself, but you being his servant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much for your participation. Great comments tonight. Let's be reading Matthew chapter 6, and Lord willing, Wednesday we'll pick it up. Similar theme, but we're going to be talking about prayer and our prayer life Wednesday night. Sunday night. Let's do it Sunday night. Lord willing, we'll see you then. God bless you all. Thank you for a great class. Thank you. Well, friends, we're winding up our worship service at Livingston. Just a couple of announcements now being made with the membership. I want to take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of the Livingston congregation for being on the live stream and sharing in this time of worship. I hope that you feel totally comfortable to ask any questions that you may have because of the teaching or anything that was done. We trust that you were encouraged and your walk with the Lord was encouraged, but we want you to know that our heart is to encourage you in taking that next step of discipleship. And so if we can help you with any spiritual need, please reach out to us. Go to our website, www.christiansmeethere.org, and contact us through that website. We'd love to help you, love to encourage you in the Lord. God bless. Hope we can meet soon.